Lace plagueis. Y'all want some tacos?
There we go.
By now, almost everyone is familiar with zombies and their origins. Rooted in West African lore, zombies are the arisen undead who've returned to torment the living by, eating their brains. Popularized in modern times by Night of the Living Dead, zombies shuffled slowly forward through the decades, from the creepy, spasming corpses of Reanimator to the British speed freaks in 28 Days Later. Arguably the most iconic horror creature of our times, they've become so ubiquitous that they end up being, kind of boring. Now, 37 seasons into The Walking Dead, the endless churn of zombies has been rotely inserted into everything from Minecraft to Fortnite. But what if zombies didn't have to be boring? What if they could still shock us and yes, even scare us? These are questions asked regularly by Japanese game designers. Because of the country's strong cultural ties to the horror genre, some great timing, innovative design, and creative risk-taking, Japanese game developers have consistently been able to surprise us and freak the f out of us for years. Let's step back for a quick history lesson on Japanese horror and the Resident Evil franchise, because only then can we explain why Japanese zombies will always be scariest. A history of horror. Any list of the greatest zombie games of all time will have more than a few entries by Japanese studios and designers, most specifically the Resident Evil series. And there's a huge cultural reason behind that. Japan, as a country, knows horror. Yes, some of the most popular horror movies in the past couple decades have been remakes of Japanese films, but the tradition of telling horror stories goes back hundreds of years. And unlike most of the scary stories we grew up with in the US, Japan's horror genre has always been meant for adults. Many Western horror stories grew out of children's stories, originally intended as parables to teach kids how to behave, like The Witch from Hansel and Gretel, or this nightmare character, Struwwelpeter. Japanese horror stories were part of the Buddhist didactic tradition of parables, meant not only for children, but for adults. Basically, if you want to make a lesson really stick, it helps to scare the shit out of your audience. Traditional Japanese horror stories called kaiden were first written down around 220 CE, and a popular game during the Edo period was the gathering of 100 supernatural tales, originally used as a test of a samurai's bravery. At night, people would gather and light 100 candles around a mirror in a different room, then take turns telling horror stories. After your story, you go extinguish one candle, look in the mirror, and return to the group. The cultural roots of scary stories are so strong in Japan that 500 years ago, they were scaring the shit out of freaking samurai warriors. So yeah, Japan knows horror. But zombies aren't a part of traditional Japanese horror. The closest thing is adapted from an ancient Chinese folk story about a reanimated body called a kyonshi, but they're really closer to vampires. Their horror stories belong mostly to ghosts. Shinto is the traditional religion of Japan and deals heavily with spirits. The spirits of your ancestors are never too far away. If properly buried, the reikon, or spirit of family members, return once a year during the Bon Festival and serves as a protector for the family. But if the proper rituals aren't followed, or the person wasn't at rest when they died, that spirit can get pissed and comes back to haunt you or harm the living. Ghosts are already baked into the traditions and cultural norms, so zombies as a concept don't really register. More importantly, with almost 100% cremation rate of the deceased, an actual outbreak in the traditional sense isn't really possible in Japan. Not that they're possible anywhere because, science. While Americans take for granted that zombies are freaky and could pop out at any moment, Japan didn't have a cultural reference point for zombies and had to work hard and think outside the box to make the concept of these monsters connect with audiences. They couldn't just slap the zombie template onto something and expect people to get it. That's a big reason why Japan is so good at zombies. Basically, they have to work harder to make them scary. The zombie outbreak in Japan. The world was introduced to the modern incarnation of the zombie through George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and the subsequent boom of Italian zombie horror which came after. Japan was going through a pivotal time in its own filmmaking, and directors and studios took the commercial success of zombie movies to heart. The immense popularity of Western zombie films and strong cultural ties to the horror genre would influence writers, directors, and designers who grew up in the 60s and 70s in a huge way. The shambling influx of zombie media would prime aspiring creators like Shinji Mikami for a big boom in a brand new art form: video games.
The year is 1989. The ascension of the new Emperor Akihito ushers in the Heisei period. The Nikkei 225 is at an all-time high. Wink and Minako Honda songs rule the airwaves, and the world was ready to welcome the fledgling video game industry into the mainstream.
1989 was a huge year for Japan and zombies in video games. This was the year that arcade players were introduced to Beast Busters, a rail shooter arcade game featuring protagonists with awesome and totally normal American names: Johnny Justice, Paul Patriot, and Sammy Stately. The story is pretty basic. A plague of zombies has taken over a town in Midwestern USA. While this fits deliberately into the American zombie template, both in setup and setting, the game already bucked the trend of what zombies could be. They aren't your typical shamblers. They can drive vehicles, use weapons, and the bosses morph into secondary forms. Are these zombies scary? Maybe not. But something more notable was happening. Japanese gaming was already shaking up the concept of what a zombie could be. 1989 also saw the release of Sweet Home, the infamous NES game based off of the Japanese horror film of the same name. While Sweet Home was a ghost story at heart, zombies appeared as enemies in the game and with a classic zombie look, complete with bubbling corpses and attacks like bite and spit poison. Most importantly, Sweet Home served as the inspiration and jumping off point for the most famous zombie series of all time, Resident Evil. Estimated to have grossed over $2 billion, the Resident Evil franchise has far outpaced every other zombie franchise in existence. Anyone who has played a game in the series, except for 6, shouldn't be surprised by this success.
What are you talking about?
Development of Resident Evil, or Biohazard as it's known in Japan, began as essentially a remake of Sweet Home. Sweet Home's director Tokuro Fujiwara tapped Shinji Mikami to explore the themes in Sweet Home further, and without the restrictions of 8-bit graphics, in what would become Resident Evil. Mikami was initially reluctant to make the game because he hated being scared, and it was this confession that made Fujiwara know that the game was in good hands. You've got to know fear to share it with others. Resident Evil is obviously a huge deal to this day, but when Capcom premiered the title in 1996, it changed the face of video games immediately. It pioneered the survival horror game, led audiences to confront the realest horror of all, item scarcity and inventory management, and was largely responsible for the success of the PlayStation, which obviously has allowed for the creation of dozens and dozens of the zombie video games that we know and love. Beyond that, these games also helped to solidify and spread an important piece of zombie lore, that of the viral zombie, the most common and scariest incarnation of the zombie. Most zombie media that preceded Resident Evil chalked zombie outbreaks up to supernatural events or comets, and if it was a toxic event, or biohazard, so to speak, it was generally accidental. Resident Evil made the idea of an outbreak deliberate, engineered, a sinister human attack designed to prey on the fear of disease that's deeply ingrained in the human psyche. An incurable disease that turns your friends and family against you and eventually strips us all of our identity and autonomy? Well, shit, I'm scared just talking about it. Interestingly enough, the continued success of zombies as video game villains was due to the fact that once Japan had established a firm vocabulary of how and why zombies are around, creators began to break the form and take it in all kinds of terrifying and/or hilarious new directions. How Japan does zombies differently. Since the introduction of zombies in Japanese video games, the genre has exploded, with some of the most beloved, or most feared, I guess is more accurate, zombies in games coming from Japanese creators. Creative takes like the zombie gargoyle hanged man from the House of the Dead, zombies who miss their babies and feel so cold, like the undead from Dragon's Dogma, and crazy terrifying enemies like the Keeper from The Evil Within, kept the concept of rotting corpses feeling fresh. Resident Evil introduced us to the T-virus, a clandestine experiment gone horribly awry that led to the creation of zombies like this guy. Classic flesh eater. He looks slow, he loves brains, he's very pale. But the T-virus didn't stop at transforming people into shambling hordes of undead. Oh no. Within the first game, we were already seeing enemies like Plant 42. Sure, maybe a little silly now, but horrifying and unheard of in 1996. Possibly because zombies were a newer and less culturally significant part of Japanese horror, the creators of those seminal video games were taking zombies in even more horrifying directions. And I'm not just talking about 1999's weirdly specific edutainment game, Typing of the Dead.
How could anyone do this?
In the US, basically the only innovative twist that's been taken on zombies is making them fast sometimes. But games like the Resident Evil series kept churning out amazing new ideas of what a zombie could be. The first Resident Evil game was already an escalation of what audiences expected from zombies. In 1996, the zombie dogs were doing fast zombies years before American cinema. And the lickers are still freakier than anything else in American zombie media. Every subsequent game in the Resident Evil franchise pushed the limits even more. Just when you thought you were okay with T-virus zombies, Resident Evil 4 broke new ground with the disgusting and horrifying Las Plagas zombies. Resident Evil Remake introduced us to the pant-shittingly surprising Crimson Heads, and Resident Evil 7 changed the game yet again. With this gross stuff. Look how gross. It's very gross, that's how gross. Japanese culture embraced the zombie as more than just an undead horror. It became a stand-in for the concept of being an outsider. Now you can find media with zombies as good guys, pop idols, gender-bending mystery solvers, zombies as zombie hunters, and of course, zombie girlfriends. And, of course, Japan has lapped America in the zomcom genre as well. While maybe they didn't invent the mashup of goofs and guts, films like Wild Zero, One Cut of the Dead, and Tokyo Zombie have pushed the limits of their sillier side as well. Japanese game companies are still cranking out mind-bending horror games that are both innovative and terrifying. Basically, Japan does zombies so well because creators there take them in unexpected directions. The lack of an innate cultural reference point makes the work of scaring audiences that much harder and causes creatives to think outside the corpse-filled box. The studios and creators are willing to combine and blend zombies with whatever other fears they think the audience might have. Giant bugs, big boys, slow, fast, animals, horrifying animal-human amalgams. The scariest thing is that you won't know what's coming. The scariest thing is that you know something unexpected will happen, and you can't be prepared for it. Did I get creeped out while writing this today in Nerd History? Yes. Am I terrified of zombies? Yes. Did I persevere for the sake of your edutainment? Yes. I wanted you all to know that Japanese zombie games, much like some modern takes on the zombie, show no signs of slowing down.
No! Don't go!
Hey guys, if you like Dorkly, the best way to support us is to sign up for Dropout. For less than the cost of a deck of magic cards per month, you get access to some awesome stuff, like Dorkly shows a whole week early, you can chat with us directly on the Discord, and some exclusive really cool shows like Dimension 20, love it, and Troopers, love it. Go to dropout.tv today for your free week trial, and I guess I'll see you on the Discord. Please be my friend.